Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, right here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk on what I believe is, I think this is show number 397, I think. Pretty sure that that's the case. Whoa, I just zoomed in my chair way too close. Hang on a second. There we go. My chair just kind of went whoop, all by itself there. Yeah, I think this is show number 397. We've only got like 3 more shows to go before we get to the big 400, which is pretty awesome. We've been running this show pretty much consistently for pretty much about 7-8 years. I think we started this in 2017, and then in 2018 we moved to my second Edinburgh studio, where we had much better internet connection, and so I could use OBS. Before that, I was using what used to be called Google Hangouts on Air to be able to do the show, and that worked kind of okay. The internet connection was pretty poor. Some of you who are here tonight will remember what that was like because you've been watching this show for all of that time. So particularly people like Bobby Booth, who is not here. Oh, he is here. He is here. He's just popped in. Bobby Booth will remember exactly what it was like because Bobby Booth was amongst the first people to actually start watching my shows. And so he'll remember exactly what it was like in the early days of Sunday Night Live. And it wasn't even called Sunday Night Live. I didn't really have a name for it back then. It just kind of existed in some weird fashion. I think I just called it like a Q&A show or something like that. So Sunday Night Live is officially, since I started calling it Sunday Night Live, on show, I think, 397 as of today. But there were some other live streams that I did before then that, like I said, they didn't really have a particular name, particular title or anything, but it was on a Sunday night. So I guess you could say, actually, if we're being strict about when I actually started doing live broadcasts on Sundays, this is probably show number 410. But since I actually started titling it Sunday Night Live, this is number, I think it's 397. Kyle, who keeps up with all of my stats, is probably the best placed to confirm or deny that. So that's pretty much how it has been in its existing format since then. So, after this show, there is a Studio One meetup, which is going to be hosted by, I believe, Billy Morgan over in New Orleans, in that kind of area in the United States. So as soon as this show is over, you can head on over there. I am not working all this week because it is my 50th birthday this week. So I have the whole week off, because I basically wanted to have the whole week to just celebrate reaching 50 years old, which to some people who are here, who, 50 years old is kind of a distant memory somewhere back in last century. And by the way, you guys who I'm referring to here are awesome, and you are among my favorite people. So I'm not saying this to kind of berate you or denigrate you or anything like that, but for me, with the things that I have been through health-wise and just general life-wise, these last very, very nearly 50 years, for me to actually get to this age is a miracle for me. So so for me, it has a little bit more meaning as a milestone. You know, for some people, they just, you know, they would take for granted that, hey, you know, hey, I've got to 50. It's a round number, and that's great. But for me, it's a particularly special milestone because it is an age I never ever expected to reach, and here we are. I've got there. So you probably are sitting there going, okay, I wonder what the hell has happened to this guy. Okay, so back in 2004, I suffered a pretty major, or at the time, we thought it was a pretty major, serious heart attack. As it turns out, it was not a major catastrophic heart attack. It was just a mild heart attack which had been caused by inflammation to my aorta. Severe inflammation of my aorta. And so that's what caused that, and that did nearly kill me, to be honest. That entire thing did nearly kill me because the inflammation to the aorta meant every time blood was being passed through the aorta, it was making the inflammation worse. It was incredibly painful. It's probably the most painful thing I have ever experienced. Like, ever. You know, it beats the heck out of being hit in the head by a 90-mile-an-hour cricket ball. It beats being slammed into a wall at an ice rink. I wasn't playing ice hockey or anything like that because I just don't have like enough of a sense of balance. But I was learning to ice skate, and there was one guy who was very confident, and he was basically just going around terrorizing everybody on the ice and being a right pain in the arse. And he decided he was going to body check me into the wall, and so he slammed me into the wall and my basically head first into the wall and knocked me out. I was out cold and apparently was not breathing. So yeah, the guy very nearly killed me. But yeah, the heart thing was terrifying. It really was utterly terrifying. And then once I knew what it was and that it wasn't as major as we all thought, I mean, it's major enough, but you know, once we all realized, hey, this is not as major as we thought, it turns out the damage was very, very minor. Once all the inflammation and everything else had cleared, which took a little while. But once all of that had cleared, you know, they were just like, yeah, there's actually very, very minor damage to your heart. So you actually got away with it. But I was in hospital for a total of, I think, 14 hours. Yeah, if memory serves, it was about 14 hours. And so once I kind of knew what it was, I actually discharged myself from the hospital, which, by the way, you should never ever do. It was stupid. Don't do that, especially after suffering something like a heart attack. Just don't walk out the hospital. But I walked out the hospital because I had a gig to get to. And I went to my gig, which was at the world famous Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, which is why I discharged myself, because it's like, if you want a kind of career milestone, one of those is playing at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club. And I was playing at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, and it was a 3-hour show. And we didn't, normally they have an intermission, like they play 2 sets. We didn't play 2 sets. We played all the way through the whole 3 hours without stopping. We didn't even pause between tunes. We just went straight from one to the other, to one to the next, to the next, to the next. I didn't even stop playing. And I was playing drums. And I got home at about 4 o'clock in the morning the next day, and I slept for 2 days straight. So to say that it is a miracle that I am here at the age of 50, I'll be 50 on Thursday. And by the way, we are going to have on our Wednesday show this week, it's still going to be Songwriting Simplified, but it's going to be a birthday party. So if you guys want to come to that, yes, we will still talk songwriting like we normally do, but it will be a birthday party as well. So I will be drinking alcohol, and I may already be somewhat drunk, like I was for the Hopine show on January 1st. I was definitely drunk, and I think I was very sweary as well. I have watched the replay, and yes, I was extremely sweary. But yeah. Okay, we got some questions here. So first of all, first thing I need to address is people who are here, because I just kind of started talking. So Billy Morgan is here. We got Ron the Keyman who is here. We got Keith from Radio Top Frumpet. We got Carl Traduziak. We got Dwayne. We got Chris Mrackner. Thank you so much for your gift, my friend. I did receive it, so thank you very, very much. That was very kind of you. We got Bobby Beers. We got JCM Sound here as well. Who else do we have? That's kind of it at the moment. All right, so questions. Chris says, happy birthday, and now you are getting older. I'm going to stand still and wait for you. Hurry up. That's really good. Yeah, I'll try not to die between now and when I reach your age, my friend. Huh? So if you have found this ability to kind of stop, create like a temporal distortion field around yourself so that you don't age and everyone else catches you up, that's fantastic. That would be awesome. Let's see. Bobby Booth says he had a heart attack in 2005. Yes, mine was in 2004. And I was told, just briefly go back to that story for a second. I was told that the inflammation to my aorta was caused by an autoimmune condition, which is very rare. I mean, autoimmune conditions are not rare, but they're reasonably rare. But this one is particularly rare, and I think it's like less than 0.5% of the population of the globe have this. And basically what happens is your immune system thinks that your aorta is some kind of dodgy cell. So it goes and decides to attack it. And so that's kind of what happened. It can be very, very serious. It can, in fact, be fatal because it can, as I discovered, induce a heart attack. And I got lucky that I only had a minor one, but if I'd had a major one, that would have been curtains. So it could happen at any time, which is why I say, that I've got to the age of 50 is amazing to me because of what I live with. All right, so going back to questions, because I should, and we've only got 13 people here. It'd be nice if we had a few more. But Ron says, I had an open support ticket that got automatically closed due to no reply on my part in 5 days. That's actually by design. Hate to tell you this, it's by design. If there is no activity on the support ticket, it closes. However, there is remedy to this. And you say 2 of those days were weekend days, so I chose to wait until Monday. Now, the thing is, it shouldn't count weekends, okay? Because it only counts working days. It shouldn't have closed counting the weekends. Should I submit a feature request to have weekend days not count against the reply period? Or is this the wrong wheelhouse for that kind of feature request? Yes, it is the wrong wheelhouse for that kind of feature request. I will discuss that when I get back off of my birthday week. I'll discuss that with IT. And I'll get them to investigate why your ticket closed, maybe earlier than it should have. However, you can reopen the ticket, okay? If the ticket is closed, what you can do is there should be a button at the top when you make your ticket. Normally that would say add a reply. It might say create follow-up. If it says that, click on that, and that will create what we call a follow-up ticket, which basically reopens the ticket. It doesn't get assigned to some random other agent, and you have to start all over again. It gets assigned back to the original agent who last had your ticket, okay? I don't work in technical support very much. I only work in technical support 2 days a week. So I'm less in touch with how they work these days than I used to be, because it was my full-time gig. It's now part-time, because the other half of my time is spent in QA, in the Hamburg team. So that's where I spend most of my time, in fact. So yeah, I'm a little less in touch with people and their tech support tickets these days, but I know the process. I know how it works, because I have, until maybe 2 years ago, I was working full-time in technical support. But I don't work full-time there anymore. It's only 2 days a week. So yeah, weekends shouldn't count against how long a ticket is left open for. However, if there is no activity after 5 working days, it does automatically close. It's not the end of the world if it automatically closes. If it automatically closes, you can reopen it. Okay? It's pretty easy to do. I won't show you how to do it. The previous thread is gone, had to rehash. No, it's not. It's not. Your previous thread is not gone. Trust me, it isn't. So you don't need to tell the story all over again. Technical support agents have access to all tickets that you have in your account, including any tickets, like historically. Let's say you made a technical support ticket 10 years ago. And a technical support agent can see that ticket. It's very easy. Everything gets archived. Nothing gets deleted. So when a ticket closes, all the details, all the information is still there. Okay? So that when you make a follow-up ticket, yes, it does look like that it's a new ticket to you, but to the technical support agent, it is not, because they can see the ticket that it was originally created, that the follow-up was created from. Okay, so you don't have to tell them anything all over again. You don't have to do that. You can just reopen the ticket. It's fine. You don't have to retell the story. They will know exactly what's going on, because they can open up your closed ticket and see all of the details. Most people don't realize that, so you're not alone in that. Most people don't realize that that's the case. But yes, it is the case that if a ticket closes after 5 days with no response from you, the ticket creator, when it closes, you can reopen it, and the agent to whom it was originally assigned will get that reopened ticket, and they will have access to the ticket that the follow-up was made from. So they will see everything. So you don't have to rehash any info at all. And in your particular case, I know what your issue is. Your issue is to do with access to a workspace, because you changed, you were in that workspace and then you left it, and subsequently you changed your email address, and now you can't get back in to that original workspace. I get that that's the issue. And it is assigned to probably the best technical support agent that we have. So you are in extremely good hands. I know that. I know the agent personally. He's a personal friend of mine. I would literally trust him with my life. Literally. And I mean the word literally in the literal sense of literally. I totally trust him with all of that. So yeah, you don't need to submit for a feature request, because the feature requests thing is for features for Studio One, for Notion, for Capture, and any of the other software products. Yeah, Lawrence. Lawrence is the guy I'm referring to. He's fantastic. I would trust with my life. Is the original support person on new thread? Yes, it will be. Yep. The IT person was on vacation. Yes, he was, just recently. So I deal with IT quite a bit, even though I'm not in technical support anymore. Or well, I am, but I'm only there 2 days a week. But I deal with them quite a bit. They are fantastic. The IT guys, they are geniuses, actually. So genuine bona fide geniuses. Okay, any other questions? If we actually have songwriting questions, then please do get them in the chat as well. I mean, I don't mind talking about personas, and I don't mind talking about, technical support processes and that kind of thing, because, I will answer those kind of questions to what I'm allowed to say. But, obviously there are certain things I can't say. Because, confidentiality and all of that kind of thing. Kyle says, Lawrence went on my machine for over an hour one day. Yeah, he is very, very thorough, and he will never admit defeat. If there is something that he will go and remote in your computer to try and figure out, he will keep going until he figures it out. He's a great guy. Okay, Ron says, I am in the Halloween Challenge 2025 now, but I can't select folders. They're grayed out. Oh, interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, you should be. Yeah. Okay, Chris says, can you show how to make and install a macro? Can you show how to make and install a macro? I tried to log one of Gregor's macros, but could not figure out. Okay. Can I do that? I can make macros. Macros are actually quite easy to do. The question more is to do with, can I actually install somebody else's macro? That might be a little bit more tricky for me to demonstrate, because I haven't really done that before. But if we go into this screen over here, so everybody should now be able to see Studio One. And if I click on this guy here, this is the macro toolbar. And I have a global toolbar here. So let's say I wanted to add something to one of these, or maybe even create a new group. Let's maybe create a new group. We will call this oops. New. I can't type. Oh, for goodness sake. New group. All right. So now that I've got a new group, I can make a new button, and I can assign a macro, or I can create a new one. So these are all ones that are already made, but let's say I decide I want to create a new one. And let's say, what don't I have on here? Let's say I want to do backup and restore. And I will call this BU and restore. So basically, when you're creating a macro, you are basically adding commands to the macro. So all of these are all of the available commands, and you can search for different commands. Essentially, the way macros work is they're not magic. I know it sounds silly me saying this, but actually some people, some people will say, oh, just create a macro for that. And the assumption is that macros can do anything short of making you a cup of coffee or making you a cup of tea. They can only do what commands are available to make it do anything, okay? And what a macro is it's basically a series of commands with arguments. So, for example, if you have a macro or a command in the macro that has a toggle, it's either going to be on or off. So it's either going to be 1 or 0. Then there would be a space for an argument here. So the argument for the command is either going to be on or it's going to be off. So it's either going to be 1 or 0. So that's what the argument would be here. Okay. So then when you've done that, and you can add other related commands to this here, and what you want to do is you want to create a chain of commands. Now you could just make this one just back up and restore. It's just a single command. And so when you click on that button, it's going to open the backup and restore dialog box, which basically backs up. If you are a Studio One Pro Plus member, it backs up all your settings files to your storage in your Studio One Pro Plus membership. Okay, if you're not a member of Studio One Pro Plus, you won't have this. This won't exist for you. This won't be an option for you. But seeing as I am, and this is an option for me, then I can just create this command. And I can just call this backup settings files in my description, and then I can just hit OK. And now you'll see that in my new group, I now have a new button. So when I click on this, it opens up the backup and restore dialog box. And then I can back up my settings, or I can restore previously backed up settings. Backing up settings files to your membership, if you are a member, make sure you have this set up. Maybe make a macro button like I have just done here. Because what this will do is, let's say you update something, or you update some plugins, or you do some kind of update to something inside of Studio One, and the result of that is that Studio One starts crashing, and that presents a problem. So maybe you discover that it's a particular VST3 plugin, or, maybe Studio One is starting to behave erratically for some reason. You're not sure what that reason is, but you have backed up your settings files to your storage. The cool thing is that you can delete your settings files from the settings folder, and to do that, you go to Help, and you go Open Settings folder. And then when that opens, for me, that's opening on my second screen. But these are all your settings files. You can basically delete everything out of here, apart from the license file, if there is one, which in this case, there isn't. And then when you delete all of those, then basically you open that folder, and then you quit out of Studio One, and then you delete everything from that folder. It's really important that you quit Studio One. So you open that folder, you quit Studio One, you delete everything in that folder, you launch Studio One again, and let's say it doesn't fix the problem. Studio One is still doing the problem, whatever that problem is. You can go to the backup and restore button that you just created here, and then what you can do is you can restore one of these backed up settings folders. So I could just click on this one, and then I could click on restore, and you can see here it will restore all of these options. So the program settings, which are all of these ones, these are grayed out, and the reason why they're grayed out is because these are default. So your profile, your external devices, your keyboard mapping scheme, your color scheme, any customization, and of course your recent song files. These ones are all optional. So plugin thumbnails, the I/O configuration, any presets, templates, and of course macros that you have created. So make sure you just basically check everything and then click on restore, and it will restore all of those settings files to the settings folder. And then Studio One will look like it should do rather than its factory default setup, which is what happens when you delete all your settings files. You start Studio One up again, it writes a bunch of new default settings. So your custom macros will be gone. Any external devices that you have connected will also be gone. Your recent files list will be cleared. But remember, the recent files list is not your songs. It is just a list of links to your songs, right? Your songs are still there. Your songs are stored safely on your hard drive. They're not stored inside the program. They're stored on your hard drive. And so if you restore your settings folder from your backup and restore dialog, make sure that box for recent files is checked. When you do that, all of those settings files that were originally written before you deleted them will come back, and you'll find that your recent files list will be repopulated with all of those original links to your songs. So you will be good. So that's how you create a macro in its most basic form. Macros are just basically little files that are a chain of commands that when you click on that or you bind it to a key command, it will fire off that sequence of commands instantly. So basically, it's like doing 5 things or 6 things or however many things you want in one click or one button press. So the idea behind macros is to make a sequence of events happen with just one button or one click, rather than the 4 or 5 that it would normally take. That's the concept behind macros. They're not magic. They're just a bunch of commands that Studio One already knows. Okay, you cannot actually make new commands. You can only make macros from existing commands. If the command is not there, the macro cannot be made for it. So if you're looking for, hey, I would like a macro to do X, and then you can search. When you're creating the macro, you can search for commands. And if you type in the particular command you're thinking of, and it doesn't appear in the list, that won't happen. You cannot make that macro because that command does not exist. So you can make a feature request for said thing, whatever that command is. Hey, I would like to be able to do this with this command, and I would like this command to basically do this, this, and this. You can make feature requests for that. And then, who knows, maybe that'll get added. So I hope that helps. And Kyle says today's show number is 397, so I was correct. Let's see. What else do we have? I'm going to go back over to the lounge. There we go. And we'll come back to Studio One if necessary. So, Chris, I hope that helps. Now, with a third-party macro that maybe you got from Exchange, you should just be able to select the macro file in the Exchange section of the browser and just click install. And it should just install it to your macro toolbar to the right place. Gregor should have given you some instructions on how to install that macro. Just Bob says, Splice just released a VST for their platform. Is this part of Studio One Pro Plus? That is a great question. Don't know. It is brand spanking new. Well, I say it's brand spanking new. It is in actual fact Spitfire Audio's labs. Spitfire Audio was acquired earlier in the year by Splice. And so one of the things that was discontinued that is a Spitfire Audio product was Labs. And Labs was basically a sample library. So with that discontinuation of that product, they then decided to make it into a product available in Splice. I believe, if I'm correct, I believe I believe it is free, if I'm not mistaken. Or at least there's a portion of Labs which is now free. Whether this will be a part of the Studio One Splice integration is actually a question for Splice. I don't know the answer to that question. I would assume that they are not going to make it available for Studio One Pro, or for the Studio One Splice plan that they have. If you've signed up to that, I don't know that they are going to make it available for that. I don't think it will be part of the 2,500 free sounds that you get with just the perpetual license of Studio One. With either perpetual license or Studio One Pro Plus membership, because the Splice integration is freely available for anybody, whether you have a perpetual license, whether you have the Studio One Pro Plus membership. The difference is whether you have the Splice membership as well. If you have the Splice membership as well, it may be that they might make it part of one of those plans. I don't think they will make it as part of the free 2,500 sounds that you get just for having the Splice integration. I don't think so, but I don't know. I could be wrong. Really, I would reach out to Splice and ask that question. They will likely be able to say yes or no. Or maybe they might tell you, hey, we're considering it, but it's not really built yet. Rich Cresswell says, regarding folders grayed out may require time for Studio One to rebuild cache. Wrong, right? Good question. Possibly. Don't actually know. To be fair, I don't use the workspace integration as much as I thought I would. I thought that this workspace integration was going to be something I'd be using a lot with a lot of my clients, and actually, as it turns out, I'm not. So I'm not really using it as much as I thought I would. However, there is something that IT, I think, are investigating with regards to the Ron's particular issue at the moment. It could well be something to do with caching. Kyle says Ron is set up as a contributor just like everyone else that is on that workspace. That's kind of what I thought. I thought that was something that we had actually fixed. JCM Sound says, can you talk about global focus versus channel focus and how to create a macro so I can switch between channel and plugin control with a keyboard shortcut? I don't think you can switch between global and focus mapping with a key command. Because again, this is one of those cases where if when you create the macro and you type in, global or focus mapping or something like that, the command probably doesn't exist. So that would be one of those ones where you probably need to actually just try creating the macro and see if a command for that exists. I don't think it does, and I think the reason why is because you probably actually need to just do the mapping for your hardware device and Studio One, and then once you have done that, every time you open a particular plugin where everything is mapped on your hardware device, the next time you open that plugin, if you it should automatically just go into focus map mode, and everything should just be there, and you should just be able to control that particular plugin. Same if you have, this is where focus mapping is on a per plugin basis, and global is for just general controls. So focus would be mapping for each individual plugin. So let's say you have 5, 6, 7, 8 plugins, and you map them to different controls on your hardware controller using focus mapping. Then once that is done and those are all applied, then when you open that plugin, then all the controls should be mapped and recalled instantly. And then when you open the next plugin with the different parameters on the same controls, again, it should just respond as you'd expect with those particular parameters for that particular plugin on those particular controls. So there isn't really kind of like a toggle switch in that respect. As far as I'm aware, anyway. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Chris. Chris says, I may have been on some pretty heavy drugs all day, so it might just be me. I broke my foot. Ow! It's not a big deal. I have another. Yeah, I said that when I broke 2 toes on my foot. Yeah, because I had, it's another one of those cricket injuries that I have. But this wasn't actually playing a game. This was in training. And I was training against the bowling machine. And they were basically setting the bowling machine to send the cricket ball down to me faster and faster and faster. And I think it was like over 90 miles an hour. I don't know how much over 90 miles an hour it was, but they told me when they got to 90 miles an hour. And I, at first it's like blinding fast. You can't really see it. And then eventually you just get used to the pace and you start playing some shots. And then they just, okay, he's used to the pace. So they up it a little bit. And so that's what they did. They started me at like 50 miles an hour and just started gradually adding 3 or 4 miles an hour until they got me up to, 90 miles an hour. And then it was past 90 miles an hour. And this is in an indoor training facility with strip lighting. And of course, strip lighting flickers at a particular frequency, right? Cricket ball, it's red. Strip lights, I didn't see the ball. I put my foot out to where I thought the pitch of the ball was so that I could play my shot. And the ball hit my foot directly on these 2 toes and shattered the knuckles of both my toes. Yeah, the pain was intense, just like your pain that you have experienced is intense. Chris says, I should be more careful climbing on ladders. Ouch, that is not a nice way to hurt yourself. Seriously, man. Heal up soon is all I will say. The pain for me was so intense, I basically passed out. And, I was out of action I think I was out of action for like 9 months before I could actually walk again. But I won't show you, but basically these 2 toes basically stick up a little bit like this now. And, because the knuckles are just completely destroyed. There's nothing that can be done. So I have to wear 2 different size shoes. On my left foot, I wear a 9. On my right foot, I wear a 9.5. Because I have to accommodate my 2 broken toes. So it's not much fun, let me just say that much. Mixmaster is here. Hello, my friend. Good to see you. JCM Sound says, because I'd like to use an SSL 360 in the plugin and then switch back to channel mode to control it. Okay, yeah. I don't have that plugin, so I don't really know. There may not be a macro command for a particular third-party plugin like that to basically toggle that switch, because you can't create commands for every plugin. Chris, that's hilarious. I'm glad to see that, you having injured yourself is not messing with your sense of humor. That's good to see. Tony Cardona is here. He says, 3 talented, good, and special people were born on October 9th. John, Sean, and of course, well, that's very kind of you to say so. Yeah, John Lennon, and his son Sean, and myself, all born on the same day. Yes, we were. We were indeed. My claim to fame is that Sean Lennon and I were born in the same hospital on the same day, but not in the same year. At least I don't think Sean was born in the same year. He might have been. I can't remember. Can't remember. Let's see, what else do we have? Iron Fist 7 is here. Iron Fist, I think you are new to my channel, so welcome to you. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. I hope you like all the other 396 shows that are here, plus the Songwriting Simplified playlist. And of course, I've got a lot of other playlists as well that you can check out for Studio One. And I've got some general tutorials as well you can check out as well. So I hope you find the stuff on this channel helpful. He says, just out of curiosity, what's your favorite plugins that you like to use? That's a great question. To cut a... Oh, okay. Tony says, Sean in 1975. So we were born in the same hospital on the same day in the same year. And I never met Sean. So I don't know him, unfortunately. So let me go back to Iron Fist question. I've used a lot of plugins over the years. Way back, I think probably maybe 2001, 2002, Waves made like this platinum bundle, which basically had literally everything that they make in it. And I managed to bag it for a discount because it was, I think it must have been Christmas or something like that. It's either Christmas or New Year's, and they were doing one of their now legendary discount sales. And so I bagged their platinum bundle, which I think contains like 2,000 plugins, something like that. So anyway, I bought the whole thing. And then from there, I just went a bit mental with plugins. And I ended up with, I think I ended up with something in the region of like 5,500 plugins, which nobody ever needs. Nobody ever needs 5,500 plugins. So, because I started mixing on SSL consoles. That's where I got my start, way back in 1980 something. I think it was 88 or 89. I think it might have been that I actually started. To be honest, I really can't remember exactly what year it was that I started mixing. I was a kid. My parents were session musicians, and so whichever studio they were working in, I went to as well, as did my sister. My sister was not really that interested, but she had to be there anyway, whereas I was interested. I played on some of the same record dates that they played on as a kid. But when I was in the control room, I was really interested in what the mixing engineers and recording engineers were doing. So I started getting involved. I would set up microphones and put cables away and stuff like that. And then I started taking more of an interest in what the mixing engineers were doing, and they started showing me what they were doing. And then they would let me, after they had printed their mix, they would let me, do my own version of the mix, which I thought was incredibly brave. And so, that's how I got started. And then I helped my school build their first recording studio because they never had one before. So I helped them build that, and I was the studio manager there. And so I ran our school's studio. Then I went off to college and I did the same thing again. I built them a studio and I managed that studio, and I did a lot of mixing there. But and both my school and my college were all on computers. So my school, we used Atari STs, and plugins weren't really a thing then. You just used whatever was in the program. But by the time I got onto PCs in the early 90s, kind of like 95, 96, kind of middle 90s, that's when I started collecting plugins. And by the time I got to like 2002, 2003, I had like 5,500 plugins. And I didn't really have a favorite. I just kind of used what I liked the sound of. And in the end, I realized that of all of those 5,500 plugins, I was maybe using the same 30 or 40 plugins and not really touching any of the others. Fortunately, now in Studio One, you can see how often you're using your plugins and when the last time they were updated was, when the last time they were used was. So you can actually keep some statistics on which plugins you're using the most. So I think that's really valuable. So what I ended up doing was going, well, I'm just using this same bunch of plugins over and over again. I'm not really using any of the others, so I got rid of them. I just deleted them off the computer. And then I switched to Studio One in 2013. I had been using Cubase for like, nearly, I think it must have been about 27 years. So not far away from 30 years on Cubase. And I switched to Studio One. And I just decided I was just going to use just what comes with Studio One. So I used just the native plugins in Studio One, and I mixed like that for a long, long time until maybe about 7, maybe 8 years ago, when I decided there were certain plugins I had heard about, and I tried out the demos, and I liked them, and I got them. So I only have 10, 15, maybe 20 third-party plugins. All the rest is just native Studio One stuff. And I don't intend buying any more plugins because there's just no point. I mean, if you are a builder or you're a bricklayer, you have a particular set of tools that you use all the time. You don't have 50 hammers. You don't have 50 trowels. You don't have 5 wheelbarrows. You just have one wheelbarrow. Maybe you have a second backup wheelbarrow. And maybe you have a backup trowel. But you have maybe the same trowel and you have maybe the same hammer. And then, you'll have a backup hammer for that just in case this hammer, comes apart. But you don't have like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different hammers going, this one sounds a little bit better. This one feels a little bit better than this one. You don't do that. So why would I do that as an audio engineer? So that to me was the logic that I used to get rid of, over 5,000 plugins. Bob says, exactly, no need for 5,000 plugins. What are the 3 essential plugins you need to use on any project? Studio One plugins only. And why? Pro EQ. Fat channel. Reverb. Room reverb, probably. And analog delay or beat delay. And that's it. I did a whole album, a whole EP called Belonging to Tomorrow. And I mixed it using those 4 plugins only. Right? I did the whole thing, just those 4 plugins only. Because you don't, basically I wanted to prove that you could do a whole record just using 4 plugins. And so that's exactly what I did. You don't need 500 plugins. You don't need 10 plugins on each channel. To be honest, if you have 10 plugins on each channel, you've gone off in the deep end. And you've gone from actually being creative to just fixing problems created by other plugins in your chain. So you may well have started off right with an EQ and a compressor, and then you've gone, oh, but now that I've done the compressing, there's some nasty frequencies. I better put another EQ after the compressor. Oh, but now I need to kind of smooth that all out. So you put in another compressor. Oh, but now I want to shape the overall sound after those plugins. So you go and you put in something that will do that. Oh, but then I need to kind of limit the dynamic range. And so you go put a limiter on. And before you know it, you've got like 5, 6, or 7 plugins on a single channel. Multiply that across all the channels. You're going to max out your computer. And then you're going to start saying, oh, Studio One doesn't handle high plug-in and high channel counts. Well, it does. It's maybe your computer that is running out of resources to handle all of that stuff, because it has to process all of that stuff in real time and then calculate each individual plugin's processing times, which we call plugin delay. And then it has to offset all those plugin delay values so that by the time the audio gets to the master fader, everything is in sync. So if you've got like 10 plugins on each channel, it's got to make 10 separate calculations per channel of what those delay compensation values should be, and then it delays and offsets each of those channels so that by the time the audio gets to the master fader, all your channels are in sync. That takes up a lot of processing. So don't do that. Don't do that. If you want a nice, solid, strong, natural sounding mix that has good separation between all of your channels, that has plenty of width, height, breadth, and depth to the mix, don't use tons of plugins. You won't achieve that. You won't achieve that with hundreds of plugins in a session. Try and shape your mix with as few plugins as you can get away with. If you're listening to something and you go, you know what, that guitar just sounds fabulous on its own, don't touch it. Don't do anything with it. Leave it alone. You know, the temptation is, I've got an insert section, I should put something in there, surely. No. If it doesn't need it, don't process it. Because as soon as you start processing it because you feel you should process it, you can end up hurting your mix. And then, of course, you chuck on more plugins to fix the hurt that you've done to your mix, which, of course, ends up with, a high channel count and then a mix that sounds weak, thin, narrow, and you've got all sorts of phase problems and phase cancellation left, right, and center. So don't even do it. Okay, there was a message deleted. Okay, I can kind of understand why the message was deleted, but I'm going to read it anyway. Chris says, whenever my wife bitches about how much I spend on audio gear, I just put more tools and sticks and more. That's funny, Chris. You're in top form tonight, mate. Mixmaster says, wondering how you feel the SSL console channel strip effects plugins compare in sound to the hardware. Excuse me. Depends upon the manufacturer, to be really honest. I'm going to say, having used them, not here, but in another studio, the Universal Audio SSL channel strips, I think, are probably top of the tree, followed by the Brainworks SSL channel strips. And of course, to be honest, what really should go ahead of the UA ones are the SSL plugins, because SSL actually make their own channel strip plugins. So those are really obviously going to be the best because, well, they're made by the company that make the damn consoles. So of course they're going to be the best. But second to that is going to be the Universal Audio ones. The Universal Audio ones are absolutely fecking outstanding. And then probably Brainworks. And then after that, I would say Slate Digital. And then the Fat Channel, the PreSonus Fat Channel. Why is the PreSonus Fat Channel so low in my ranking? Well, the simple reason is the state-space modeling technology that is used is fantastic. However, there is this little caveat that I need to present to you here. The Fat Channel plugin was designed so that Studio Live console users could transfer their mixes from the console into Studio One and have a one-to-one relationship between the mix they did in the console to what they get in Studio One. So they needed to have a fat channel plugin equivalent to what they have natively on the mixer. So there are console emulations and hardware emulations that are built into the Studio Live mixers, right? I mean, they're technically not console emulations, but there are some plugins on there that kind of emulate external hardware gear. So in order for the fat channel to work in Studio One in the same way that it does on the SSL, you have to basically create the exact same plugins, right? Here's the thing. The memory on the SSL consoles is very, very small. So that means the amount of emulation computations that you can do in the fat channel plugin is limited, right? You don't have that problem with the Universal Audio emulations or the SSL emulations, because they're not designed for the fat channel and they're not designed to fit into a very, very small form factor. However, fat channel is designed to be a small form factor, and so the fat channel that you get in Studio One is the exact mirror of the fat channel on the consoles. So they have a small form factor, which means you don't get quite as many harmonic overtones and distortions and saturations as you do with something like the Universal Audio or the Slate Digital plugins, because they don't have that memory issue. So essentially, the way they are designed is they are designed to sound exactly the same on the board as they do in Studio One. So they have to have the same kind of the same memory, basically. Chris says plugins are like steak in your freezer and good bourbon. You can never have too much. That's good. I like that. Chris says tools. You've never seen my shop. Lots and lots and lots of tools. Yeah, some people do have lots and lots of tools. I really don't. Kyle says understanding the use of folders with buses can simplify your mixing. Yes, it most certainly can. I think before you get to the whole idea of buses, folder buses, you need to understand how busing works in Studio One first on its kind of basic level. And then you can start getting into the idea of folders, and then beyond that you can get into nested folders and stuff like that. Robert Hunter is here. Hello, welcome to the show. He says, sorry, could only come in late. Are you focused on audio processing, mixing related plugins? Only are instrument plugins in their own category? We talk about pretty much anything to do with recording, mixing, mastering, and our specific focus is Studio One on this show. So, because basically this channel for a long time was endorsed by Presonus. It's not anymore because I work for the company, conflict of interest and all of that stuff. So, it's not sponsored anymore, but, I work for the company. So, I like to keep it kind of focused as it has been over the last, 13 years or so. Can't even remember when I started making videos. It might have been like 10 years ago, I think, that I started actually properly making videos. I think the channel existed before then, and I didn't really make any videos because I didn't really know what I was doing with making videos. Now I do. But I've been making videos on this channel for like 10 years, pretty much. So yeah, so that's what we talk about. To be honest, Robert Hunter says, if instrument plugins are fair game as well, yes they are. Then I respectfully disagree. Studio One instruments are all you need, while expressing pleasure in using many of the instruments. You know what? You are absolutely entitled to disagree. And to be fair, I don't only use Studio One instruments. I use a bunch of other ones as well. I don't use a lot, but I do use a bunch of other ones as well. I have a number of instruments made by UJAM. I do have a Spitfire library as well. I have the BBC Discover orchestral thing, got that, and I got a few other things as well. But yeah, my personal view of plugins is really simple, and that includes virtual instruments as well. I use fundamentally what is built into the program, and then I supplement with other things as I need them. So if I need something to sound like, if I have a particular mix that I'm doing that I need to sound very, very analog, like it was all done in an SSL console environment, then that's where the SSL channel strips come in handy. You can just put SSL channel strips right across every channel as your first insert, and it's like you're mixing through the SSL. And then, of course, there's the Retro Mix Legends console, console emulations as well. There's a good SSL one there. There's a it's SSL style, and one of the presets in that SSL style module in the Retro Mix Legends is it emulates the 4000E mixer console, which I used when I first started. Loved the sound of that console. And so, you know, I could park those across everything. I can park the mix effects across all my buses and my main out, and then on my channels, I can have the Brainworks SSL, or I could have the SSL across the first insert of every channel. And then that way, I'm effectively mixing through an SSL console. I do that where I need to do it. But if I'm working on something that doesn't need that, that actually needs a very, very clean, very crisp, very dry sound, then I'm not going to use analog emulating plugins. I'm going to use probably clean, clear, native plugins. I may use the Fab Filter suite, which I also have. Lowen says a guy made a YouTube video asking, has PreSonus abandoned mix effects? Well, that question is, as with any question that you ever ask a software company, have you abandoned X? It's an argument from silence. Just because there are no new updates for it, it doesn't mean there's nothing happening. That's an assumption. Okay? And of course, most software companies work under secrecy, and they have non-disclosure agreements that all of their staff operate under. So you're not going to get an answer to that question. Has X plugin been abandoned? Has X feature in Studio One been abandoned? You're not going to get an answer. And you're not going to get an answer from somebody that actually works for the company. It's just not going to happen. Because we all work in secrecy, and we all work under non-disclosure agreements. So what I'm saying to you basically is, the answer to that question is, that is an argument from silence. Just because you don't see something happening doesn't mean something isn't happening. So, I hope that answers your question, Lorenz. Mixmaster says, I have duplicate tools sometimes for flexibility. 2 saws, different blades, backup in case of failure, or so I can find one of them when I need one. Yeah, and that's a decent answer to, you know, the best way to have to manage your plugins. He says, if your basic premise is to use a few good tools and instruments, write well, record well, mix well, for sure, because we all know that it's harder to pull off than it sounds. Definitely. Definitely. And that's my modus operandi, to be honest, is to try and make the best, most natural sounding music that I can make. I mean, for me, the genre that I work in makes sense. You know, what I do is acoustic music, like folk music, Scottish folk music, jazz. I do a lot of acoustic jazz, but I also do funk and soul and R&B as well. So for funk, soul, and R&B, I maybe use some more heavy-hitting plugins, but for things like orchestral work, folk music, jazz, big band, I don't need a lot of plugins, so I'm not going to use a lot of plugins because I want it to sound as natural as I can make it sound. So for something like a big band record, yeah, I want it to sound analog because to me, big band, natural, acoustic, analog, so I want to give it a nice bunch of analog sweetness. So yes, I'm going to use console emulation plugins for that. All right, we are 10 minutes over time, and Billy Morgan is wanting to start his Studio One meetup. So if you want to head over there, follow Billy's link, which he has posted there. Get yourselves over there and come join the party, and more questions can be asked there. And if you have a particular Studio One problem, maybe we can address that there too. Also, if you have, maybe you want to exercise your imagination and talk about maybe what you would like to see in terms of the future of Studio One, features that you would like to see added, all of that can be discussed there too. All right, we're going to end the show here. Thank you very much for joining me. Remember, Wednesday, birthday party show. Please come to that. I'd love to have you guys here. We will extend that show beyond the normal 1 hour. So if you want to stick around for a little bit longer, we will make that a bit more of a longer show. And then, of course, the next day is my birthday itself. And then we'll have Sunday night live as normal next Sunday, providing I'm not dead. Wow, slightly morbid ending there. Anyway, I will see you guys on Wednesday for my birthday show. Good night, everybody. Take care. Have a great start to your week.